You have interviewed basically everybody. I was having trouble writing this question and I was like, you've interviewed the most culturally relevant. No, I'm like, just a couple just off the top, Tracee Ellis Ross, Cardi B, Lauren London, but just so many more people. And it's incredible. And I appreciate and admire you so much. I've read so much of your work that I didn't realize I read. And then since I found who you are, I'm like looking for your byline. And anyway, so how do you get tapped for those opportunities? For specifically for folks who are in journalism or adjacent spheres, I would love to take this opportunity for you to share some advice with those folks or advice or experience. How did you get there? Aside from kind of the internal work that we've been talking about, that is so crucial, that do that. And also the more logistic work, what does that take?
Yeah. Okay. This is a good question. And what I actually can do is I can break it down within the instance of the stories that I've written, and I'll use two as an example. But the one thing I will say is, remember how I was talking earlier in our conversation around like something that has helped me to be successful has been like living and being out in the world and being out in New York. So much of that comes with conversations and people helping me to notice things that I don't notice. And I take a lot of that and I then use that to think about what I want to write about. A lot of what I generally, I would say around my pitches and a lot of my profiles, it's very like, you won't have to call me, I'll call you, because I'm watching you. And I'm like, it's normally not something that I'm pitched a person through a publicist who's like, I think you should interview this person because they are a founder, a beauty brand. It actually has never worked that way for me. It's always me actually talking to a lot of people outside of beauty about what's on their mind, and like me making the connection of like, that's all about beauty. What are they what are they talking about? And so I would say generally that is a good overhead thing to know. With my story with Tracee Ellis Ross, that came about and ended up being the cover of a special edition of a section within the Sunday paper, of watching Tracee Ellis Ross online, of looking at her Instagram and being like, wow, this is a woman who is being her full self and has figured out something about wellness and being well that I have not figured out yet. It did not come from me looking at her on Blackish, even though I love Blackish and watch Blackish. It didn't actually come from me knowing that she was launching a beauty brand. It was not until I reached out to her people that I found out that she was doing press around it. I had initially just pitched a really actually short profile on something maybe that was interview style Q&A or something really short to New York Times. And I thought that that was important because it wasn't that I wouldn't call it a limitation, but I knew as a freelancer what kind of stories they would accept from me. And like, I thought a lot about like format. What is a column or something that they already do that I think Tracee Ellis Ross could be a fit within, right? Because I want to do this story. So there's definitely this element of like, sometimes boundaries are actually good in a way, and knowing your relationship with somebody is good because it helps you to be like, okay, cool. This is kind of like how I talked about power can be control. Like Janet Jackson talks about this a lot in her music, honestly, and control can be power. Like, this is what's within my control. This is what I'm going to make happen. That was very much like my outlook. So I pitched it to the New York Times, something that was just like, Tracee Ellis Ross is this wellness woman and it could fit within this column. I reached out to her people. I think I found her publicist on maybe I Googled her publicist or something like that. Maybe then I asked a friend about her specific email. And then it turned into a thing of, oh, she also has this brand coming up. And then the New York Times on their end was actually working on a wellness issue. And so it all just serendipitously made sense. And then the last one I'll say for Meg the Stallion, which I also wrote for the New York Times and for the style section. It was the BET Awards weekend, and I saw that she was having a beauty pageant, where she was giving away scholarships to 3 women who were competing in this beauty pageant. And so I was like, I totally think that I could pitch this as an experience that I am going to I'm going to report on, I'm going to talk to Meg the Stallion. We're going to take photos, and it's going to be great because it's an in real life event and it's all around this beauty. It gives me a way to cover Meg the Stallion within the style section. And so I very much think in that way. And then I think a lot of what I use in my pitches is like, I think of it as a nut graph, which is essentially like, what is the main thing you think you want to communicate in your article? That's always very, very clear when I pitch an editor. And then I like to talk in bullet points too, of like, these are the elements of what I think this story is. And I really try to be as candid as possible and almost like it's a conversation, but I really think it's down to the art of the pitch, having clarity and a pitch only being long if it needs to be. But ultimately, a good nut graph, this is what I think my story is going to be about, and some points that support that. That's not you writing the story.